Alright, well today we've got something a little bit different and something a little bit special. This is a 2007 VW GTI Fahrenheit edition. Now, I never even knew that this Fahrenheit edition existed. This is a pretty interesting thing. They only brought 1,200 of these to the United States. It's a special little car, and it's not just a cosmetic package. This is a performance package. You're getting the only choice of transmission as a DSG, so obviously they were looking towards performance in that way. A stiffer suspension, wider tires. Right off the bat, this feels like a German car. It is stable, it is refined, the handling is excellent. This car is stock suspension-wise, and man, this thing is tight. Now let's talk about the Dsg transmission. This was the only option in this special edition Fahrenheit GTI. And I've got to say I'm impressed. For 2007, this is early on into the dual clutch transmission's kind of life cycle. And it performs really, really well. Now there's some obvious places where they were getting used to tuning these transmissions. Like when you downshift, it can over rev sometimes and you get that kind of lurch forward. But the shifts are, I mean, really instantaneous. For a car of this era, I mean, this thing's 13 years old now. I cannot believe how good this transmission is. I was driving a much more modern, like B8.5 Audi S4 pretty recently, and this is close. This is real close to being just as refined and just as fast as that transmission. If I was in the market for one of these Golfs, man, it would be a hard decision for me to choose between the DSG and the manual, especially as a daily driver. Because when you put this thing over into drive and you're just cruising around, it performs just about exactly like a automatic. As far as the engine is concerned, this 2 liters pretty close to stock. It's probably making a little bit more than the 200 that it was making from the factory, but it feels healthy, and there's so much torque to be had down low. It's making peak torque from 1,800 RPMs. And when it comes on boost, this thing moves. It really does, and this thing's not heavily modified at all. But this little 2 liter with the dual clutch, I mean, you can really hustle this thing down a road. Yeah, the downshifts aren't always as crisp as I would like, and they can kind of lurch a bit, especially going into the lower gears, but for a 2007, it's very impressive. And I mean, geez, that thing moves. It moves, and the torque is what really sets you back. These 2 liters, especially when they're stock turbo, they're tuned very much so to give you that torque shove down low. And it spools up nice and fast. There's not a whole lot of lag here. But what I'm really enjoying is the handling. It's an impressive little car in terms of handling. Going around these corners, there's very little body roll, not much to speak of really. It'll turn a little bit and then it just sets, and it's very neutral. I'm not feeling really any understeer, not that you'd be feeling much on the street, but it doesn't really want to push. Whereas even the little Abarth wanted to push pretty quickly, and at reasonable speeds it would start to push. And these cars also have a adaptive rack, and so the steering ratio itself is actually changing with speed, kind of in the same vein as some of the early E60 BMWs were doing. But this feels much more natural than some of those early BMW systems. Like I had an E60 545 that had an adaptive rack. And every once in a while, that thing would really feel a little bit odd as the ratio was changing. Whereas this is just totally seamless. As the speed increases, the steering becomes more direct, and I really am enjoying the steering. There is a lot of feel coming through the wheel. It's a very functional car that doubles as a pretty serious little performance car. I mean, you could keep up with a lot of stuff on a back road with this thing. If for no other reason than because of the ease of use. I mean, you've got all of the torque down low. You don't have to worry too much about where you are in the power band. You've got the DSG, so you're always keeping your hands on the wheel. The shifts are lightning fast. You can just focus on really blasting through a back road in this thing. Now, I don't think that I would pay a huge premium for one of these Fahrenheit cars, considering you're getting a tuned suspension, some bigger wheels and tires, and the cool color. I wouldn't pay a huge premium for those things because you could really make those changes yourself for probably less money. But if you were to stumble upon one, this is a really cool little car. I love the interior styling with the orange accents, the fact that it's one of 1,200, and man, that suspension really is awesome. For a little front-wheel drive hatchback, this thing performs exceptionally well. Oh yeah, mid-corner it just sets and then goes. That's awesome. What a capable car. For the street, I mean, this is a great amount of performance. I would love one of these. But a tastefully modified GTI of this generation is a really excellent value proposition because you can get these all day long for way under $10,000. The Fahrenheits are worth a bit more money, but just a 2-liter GTI with DSG or the stick, either way, I mean, you're gonna have a good time whether you get the dual clutch or whether you get the stick. At least it seems that way to me. Is for a small car, the high-speed stability is definitely there. This thing really is very planted. It has such a nice surge from like 2,000 RPM. You can just roll into it, start to build that boost, and it just freight trains forward. You really do not have to go much above 3,000 RPM if you're just driving around town. I've got to say though, the highlight of this car for me has been the DSG. It's extremely quick, extremely impressive, especially considering the date or the year of this car, and then the handling. The handling is so sharp. For a little hatchback, it is so dynamically capable. I'm very, very impressed. The turn-in is sharp. The steering, especially once you get up to a higher speed and the ratio tightens, is so quick and accurate. And there's a good amount of feel coming through it. There's not much body roll. And this is just a fairly stock GTI. The Fahrenheit has a couple of little changes like we've talked about, but nothing drastic. This thing is close to stock. And it feels as refined as the other German brands to me. Something like an Audi or like a little A4 or A3, which is, wow, woo, little bit of wheel spin. This thing is a blast. Oh yeah, I get it now. I get why people love these things. I really have nothing to complain about. Overall, I'm just very impressed with this thing.